Well, hello everyone, welcome back guys. Hope you all are doing well. This is Mohammad Badruddin back again with another module from Pursuiger, and the name of that module is Insecure Deserialization. So before jumping to the lab directly and before solving any lab, this is very important for you to understand the complete process. So I will give you very high level overview about all of these points and all of these key terms you should understand about each of them, and then we will start solving the lab so that at the time of solving the lab you will have a complete high level picture in your mind. Okay, so the story begins with the serialization of an object. So a lot of time web applications or applications handle complex data objects, and those data objects sent to that application in a streamed, chunked or fragmented form. Then the application reconstruct all of these chunks and reconstruct that object completely. Then it will start taking action what a user is asking for. Maybe the user is only asking for getting the information about that particular object. User may want to delete that object, user may want to manipulate that object, or many more things. But if that object which is sent to the application is controlled by user, then this is a red flag, because if it is controlled by the user, a threat actor can manipulate this object. Okay, and once this object is manipulated, once it is received to the application in the chunked form, the application will reconstruct that object. Reconstruction of that chunked data or fragmented data or streamed data is known as deserialization. Converting that object into a stream is known as serialization, and once the application reconstruct that stream into its original state, which is an object, that is known as deserialization. So this is the complete process, a high level overview of the insecure deserialization. Fine. So now we will go further. So serialization and deserialization are two complementary processes used in data handling, particularly in programming and data storage. So if we talk about the serialization is the process of converting an object or data structure into a format that can be easily stored or transmitted over the network, or stored into a file or into a database. And this format is typically a byte stream of a text representation, and that text representation is gonna be in the JSON format or XML format. Fine. Now the purpose of the serialization is to save the state of the object to a file and send it over a network, or send it to a network, or store it into a database, as I mentioned before, and enabling easy retrieval and reconstruction later. We can take one example about the serialization. So let's say you are playing a game, okay, and when you save a game, the game object contains all the players' progresses in serialized into a file so that it can be loaded later. Okay, now if we talk about the deserialization, so deserialization is the reverse process of the serialization. As I mentioned before, it involves converting the serialized format back into an object or data structure. And the main goal of the deserialization is to reconstruct the original object from the serialized data so that can be used in a program. Now we take the first example about saving a game. Okay, so if we talk about the deserialization, we take the same example, but what deserialization will do, you save the game, so it saves the particular point in time state of that game with all users or all players state saved into a file. But once you do the deserialization, you load it again, so the game data is deserialized from the file back into the game object, restoring the player's progresses. Fine. So this is about serialization and deserialization. Now, I will talk about this particular section because this is also very important to understand. Okay, so O stands for object and S stands for stream. So, as you can see, O is an object and the object here is order. That order object contains 5 characters. So object that contains 5 characters, ORDER. So basically you are distributing it or dispersing it into bytes or a stream. Fine. Then you have the object have the attributes. The first attribute is product, maybe the product name, product price, product ID, color of the product, or something like this. All these things are the attributes of that particular object. So the first attribute is product that contains the 7 character. So S means stream, S means stream, and having 7 characters, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay. Another attribute, S stands for stream that contains 9 characters, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay. So this is the structure of the serialized object into the JSON format. Now let's go further. Okay, what is serialization? I already described here. So you can also read this and I will highly recommend you to read this. So serialization is the process of converting complex data structures such as an object and their field into a flatter format that can be sent and received as a sequential stream or bytes. Serializing data make it much simpler to write complex data to inter-process memory like within a file or a database, and send complex data over a network between different components or APIs, something like this. Okay. One more thing I want to mention here, that insecure deserialization is also known as object injection. Why we call it object injection? Because you can see this is the object, and within this object a threat actor can inject something malicious, okay, or manipulate this. So it is also known as object injection. Okay, serialization versus deserialization, I also talk about that. So one more thing which is very important here, which I missed, so I will cover here. Like many programming languages offer native support for serialization. Exactly how objects are serialized depends on the languages. So some languages serialize object into binary formats and some just into the string format, what you just see in the very first picture. So it depends on the language what you are using. So note that all the original object attributes are stored in serialized data stream, including any private field. So to prevent a field from being serialized, it must be explicitly marked as transient in the class declaration. So suppose here, this is also important to understand. Now suppose that object also contain user password, let's say, and you don't want that user password to be serialized. The purpose here is to understand that if you want to secure some attributes which are sensitive and critical, so you have to explicitly mark them as transient in the class declaration. So at the time of serialization, uh, any private field will not be serialized. Okay. Now be aware that when working with different programming languages, serialization may be referred to as marshalling in Ruby. So if you are using Ruby programming language, in serialization is known as marshalling. Once you are using Python, it is known as pickling. Okay. So these terms are synonyms with serialization. Now, what is insecure deserialization? I already told you. You just need to read it and you will get more uh, visibility on insecure deserialization. How do insecure deserialization arises? So insecure deserialization occurs when an application accepts and processes serialized data from untrusted sources without proper validation. And this is what I told you. The first thing is the input or the object should not be user controlled. okay, so that it cannot be manipulated. And the second thing is the application once receive any object, it must validate, verify the source, validate the source, and also verify what it receives. Fine. So validation is always important, okay. And zero trust architecture comes into the picture here in this place, that never trust, always verify. So this can lead to the security vulnerabilities such as remote code execution or data manipulation. If I take a daily life example, so let's say you receive a sealed box, let's say serialized data with a toy inside, that is, the toy is data. And if you trust the sender completely and just open it without checking, someone could have replaced the toy with a dangerous item. Okay. So in software, if a web application blindly trusts and uses data from a user without checking its content, an attacker could craft malicious data that when processed affect the application adversely, and similar to opening the unsafe box. Okay, so this is very high level example to just make you understand in term of application. Okay, so highly recommend to read this content. Okay, what is the impact of insecure deserialization? Of course, as I mentioned before, that arbitrary code can be executed, data manipulations and remote code execution, okay, and data manipulation and all. Even in case where remote code execution is not possible, insecure deserialization can lead to privilege escalation, arbitrary file access, or denial of service attacks. Fine. Now, how to exploit insecure deserialization vulnerabilities? We will talk about this in the next video where we solve the lab, and how to prevent insecure deserialization. Generally speaking, deserialization of user input should be avoided unless absolutely necessary. The high severity of exploit that is potentially enables and the difficulty in protecting against them outweigh the benefits in many cases. So overall, you must validate the source and you must validate the data you are receiving. Okay, if you do not need to deserialize data from untrusted sources, incorporate robust measures to make sure that the data has not been tampered with. Okay, so integrity is most important part here. For example, you could implement a digital signature, okay, to check the integrity of the data. So integrity is most important here. You may add hash functions to verify the message digest, and digital signature is actually a best solution at that instant. Okay, however, remember that any checks must take place before beginning the deserialization process. This is again the most important. If you check after you process, then no benefit of the digital signature because the damage has already been done. But you must check the integrity and authenticity, validate everything before you execute or process anything. Okay, so that's it for this video. I think uh, I already took much time. Now we will meet in the next video where we will identify vulnerabilities like this insecure deserialization, and we will try to solve the very first lab of insecure deserialization. So that's it for this video. If you like the content, please like, subscribe, and share. I'm gonna see you in the next video. Till then, bye.